Hello and welcome to my channel, and today is Monday, and that means we're here for True Crime Tales. As always, content warning, it gets graphic. We talk about murder, we talk about death, we talk about pedophilia, we talk about child abuse, we talk about animal abuse, etc. With that being said, let's just get into it, because this one's kind of a doozy. Stephen Brian Pennell, known as the Route 40 Killer, was an American serial killer. He was Delaware's only known serial killer in modern history, being convicted of the murders of 2 Newcastle County, Delaware women and suspected of killing 3 others. He abducted most of his victims from U.S. Route 40 near Bear. The first victim was 23-year-old Shirley Anna Ellis, a nurse. On November 29, 1987, she left Wilmington Hospital around 6 p.m., where she was assisting an AIDS patient, catching a lift on her way home on Route 40. Her body was later found by the roadside by 2 boys. There were no signs of sexual assault, but she had been seriously abused, with her killer tying a string around her neck and hitting her head with a hammer before she died. I don't know if he tried to strangle her with this string, but I didn't even know that was possible. But I guess if it's strong enough and it doesn't break, you can use it to do that. I didn't know that. The second victim was 31-year-old Catherine A. DeMauro. On June 28, 1988, about 7 months after the first murder, around 11:30 p.m., she was seen walking down Route 40 at 6:25 a.m. Construction workers found her naked body at a construction site. No signs of sexual assault were found. Like Ellis, she was killed by hammer blows and strangulation, but unlike the first murder, DeMauro's body was covered in blue fibers. And that was really the key piece of evidence that they needed. Special police forces, along with the FBI's profiling unit, concluded that a serial killer was operating in close proximity to Route 40. Obviously. Police and federal agents disguised as sex workers in an attempt to gather information, with a task force of over 60 people being formed solely to capture the killer, but couldn't. Yeah. 60 people were assigned to find this guy, and they couldn't do it. 60 law enforcement officials couldn't find this guy. On August 22, 1988, 27-year-old sex worker Margaret Lynn Finner disappeared. A number of witnesses had seen her enter a blue Ford driven by a white male near Route 13. About 3 months later, her body was found by a hunter near the Chesapeake, Delaware Canal. Her body was so badly decomposed that the exact cause of death could not be determined, although signs of torture were visible on her remains. Finner was identified using dental records. And obviously they weren't going to find too much evidence on her because, they said, she was decomposed, and it had been 3 months. That means she was out in the elements. That means rain, snow, shine, whatever was going on around this time. She was exposed to it for an extended period of time, and that could actually cause evidence to not only deteriorate but be contaminated. So even if they found fluids, it would be considered contaminated evidence. I looked this up because it's been exposed to the elements, and there's no way to prove definitively that it's from a human or from even her killer. You see what I'm saying? On September 18th, Michelle Gordon, a local sex worker known for frequenting Route 40, was seen to enter a blue Ford van associated with Pennell. On September 20th, her body was found on the rocks of the Chesapeake, Delaware Canal. In the autopsy, it was discovered that she had been drugged with cocaine, which had caused her heart to stop while she was being tortured. On September 23rd, 26-year-old Kathleen Ann Meyer of Brookmont Farms disappeared. A police officer saw her get into a blue Ford on Route 40 at 9:30 p.m. He was able to write down the license plate number, which turned out to belong to Pennell's car. Her body was never found. On September 14th of 1988, Renee Tashner, an undercover police officer posing as a sex worker, roamed Route 40 in an attempt to capture the killer. After passing several vehicles, she spotted a blue Ford 7 times in 20 minutes. She went to a more isolated area, and the vehicle stopped next to her. The driver was white, with Tashner noticing that the floor had a blue carpet. They had carpet back then. Carpet. Actual carpet. The man appeared nervous, hardly looking her in the eyes, but still attempted to convince her to enter the car. She refused, claiming that she was tired, but managed to tear some fibers from the blue carpet and write down the license plate number. Upon examination of several license plates, it emerged that the vehicle belonged to Stephen Brian Pennell, a 31-year-old electrician, married and father of 2 with no criminal record, only because he hasn't been caught. Delaware Public Prosecutor Charles Oberly approved a police search warrant of the Pennell van, while at the same time searching for other offenses for which they could arrest Pennell. While searching the vehicle, prints matching the blood and hair of the victims, as well as the same adhesive tape used in the DeMauro killing, were found. A torture kit was also found, which included pliers, whips, handcuffs, needles, knives, and restraints. Pennell was arrested on November 29th, 1988, a year after he murdered the first victim and was charged with killing 3, Ellis, DeMauro, and Gordon. He decided to invoke his right to remain silent. Don't they usually? Or you could go the Ted Bundy route and you could talk about all the crimes you want to talk about, but you're going to talk about them in third person, because that way you're at least, you get it off your chest and you could talk about them and that's something you're proud of, but you're not saying that you actually did it, you're just speculating. At the start of the trial, a panel of defense attorneys claimed the initial fiber taken by Officer Tashner was obtained illegally because it was taken from his car. Judge Richard Gebelin dismissed these allegations, saying that the carpet was visible to Tashner's eyes as soon as she opened the vehicle, so evidence from these fibers were legal. Once the fibers were examined, it was shown that they had DNA residues belonging to the victims. It was the first trial in the United States that used DNA evidence as absolute legal evidence. Gebelin had to set a legal precedent and listen to the opinions of experts and scientists who helped to verify the DNA evidence. On November 23rd, 1989, I don't know why I keep wanting to say 3 today. 1989, the jury reached a decision and convicted Pennell of murdering DeMauro and Ellis, but acquitted him of Gordon's murder because of lack of evidence. The jury decided not to recommend the death penalty, but 2 life sentences. Shortly after the decision, a bouquet of flowers was sent to the prosecutor's office with the note reading, "You made us feel human again," from the women of Route 40. Pennell's lawyer appealed the court's decision on the grounds that the fiber was obtained illegally. The court dismissed it and, based on new evidence introduced in the case, convicted Pennell of murdering Gordon and Meyer. Gordon was the one he had been. Previously, they had not been able, he'd been acquitted of that one. They had not been able to get him on Gordon because of the lack of evidence, and now, by them petitioning it, actually ended up getting him more charges because they charged him with 2 more. At this point, Pennell dismissed his lawyer and asked to represent himself, a decision the court approved. And honestly, listen, if y'all ever have heard this expression, I don't know if you have, I have, but a man who represents himself has a fool for a client. And you would think that these people learn that, but they don't. You need a legal assistance. You need legal assistance. At this in a surprising move, he announced that he wished to receive the death penalty. He argued that the entire Constitution began with a verse from the Hebrew Bible, and as soon as the court found 2 witnesses who could testify to his guilt, he deserved the death penalty under the Bible's laws. He cited 2 passages from the Bible to explain his position. On October 31st, 1991, the court sentenced Pennell to death. Under the Delaware Constitution, every death penalty judgment requires a further hearing from the Supreme Court, and on February 11th, 1992, Pennell appeared before them demanding that he be sentenced to death. He was the only defendant in Delaware's legal history to represent himself before the Supreme Court, and the only man convicted to willingly seek a death sentence. However, he pleaded not guilty to the murders and spoke of the murder in the third person, like Ted Bundy did, saying that the killer was enjoying the process of the murder, but not the murder itself. I have questions about that, because, how do you not, if you're enjoying the process, then you're enjoying the murder, because you're enjoying the process, and the process is during the murder. Does that, am I wrong there? The Delaware State Attorney General objected to the death penalty, but the judges sentenced Pennell to death anyway. His execution was scheduled for March 14th, 1992. 2 people appealed against Pennell's execution, but both were unanimously dismissed by the court. His wife, Vera Catherine Pennell, appealed the Supreme Court's decision. She received help from the local branch of the American Citizens Association and a law professor who was one of its directors. He argued in his appeal that Pennell was insane and could not fully understand the gravity of his actions, so the trial should be reopened, with Pennell being barred from representing himself. The Supreme Court rejected the demand. Now, I don't know if that's because they can't bar him from representing himself, or if they just didn't want to have to go through the process of, like, you know, a competency hearing. I'm not really sure how that would work. Because, like, being able to represent yourself is, like, you're right, but, like, I don't know how they would have gone about that. Prior to the execution, numerous reporters tried to ask Pennell for exclusive interviews, hoping to reveal the location of Meyer's body. He turned down every request. When it came close to his execution date, he agreed to be interviewed by one newspaper with his lawyer present. During this interview, Pennell received no new information, nor where he had hidden Meyer's body. On March 14, 1992, at 9:49 a.m., Pennell was executed by lethal injection, becoming the first person executed in Delaware in 46 years and the 165th person to be executed in the United States since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976. His last meal consisted of crab cakes, steaks, corn on the cob, french fries, bread and butter, and a cola. And that's the story of this guy, the Route 40 killer, who is dead and along with this, which is just fine in my opinion. Thank you for bearing with me lately. I've been sick for the last week. I cannot currently hear anything out of my right ear, and I can't hear normally anyway, but it's like making this 10 times worse. So if I sound off or louder than usual, it's because I can't really gauge my volume, and also I'm still sick and tired of it. But thanks for hanging out with me today. As always, please don't do anything I wouldn't do. Be cautiously kind to others and make good choices. And I'll see you all later. Bye.